I am Vinnie Tortorich, folks. Your good intentions have been stolen, but don't worry. I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft and succulent at the beginning of this process, but hang in there. Before long, you will be lean and mean, just like the person on the other mic, Miss Gina Grad. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Always happy to be here. And I know we have so much stuff to get to today. Um, it's so funny because you have lots of notes in purple calligraphy ink that I would love to get into. And I mean, I would love to focus on the ink, but I'm sure the things that you wrote are the things that people really need to know about. But the last show you mentioned the Blue Zone. I have two friends, one in New York, one in LA. They are not friends. These are two separate conversations about how I just watched that and I've completely changed my eating because of it. And the things they're eating aren't very, they're certainly not NSNG. And so I would love to get your take on the Blue Zone sort of movement that has been going on for a while and is now really in the public sort of zeitgeist because of the doc.
Blue Zone, that's on Netflix, right?
I think so.
Is that the same network that did Making a Murderer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see where that's being debunked now, the whole series?
What do you mean it's being debunked?
The whole thing that they're showing all the stuff that these two filmmakers left out about, because the whole time we were watching Making a Murderer, I was like everyone else. Serena and I, we were
Oh,
still living in Woodland Hills. We went through those two. There was 10 episodes. We went through them in
yep.
2 nights,
Same.
right? And you were convinced that the police department was railroading this guy.
Well, that's
And
what we show. That's what we saw.
how can they possibly send this guy to prison? He's a hero,
Yeah.
right? Um, and now there's a whole thing showing all the stuff they didn't show you.
Oh
Now,
no.
how do we know that's right? We don't know if that's right. I don't know if the new thing is right or wrong.
We don't, but they didn't show
No,
us.
no. So, these documentaries, and I'm a guy who makes documentaries. I try to invite vegans onto my documentary. They won't come on. They won't come on. So what are your friends saying about, because I refuse to watch it because I know what they're going to say. I know the whole thing about the blue zones, right? I know what's going on. I know the lies. So what are they saying? And I'll see what I can debunk from what
Sorry,
they're
I
saying.
yeah, I took 14 seconds and accidentally Googled what did making a murderer get wrong, and now my head's all screwed up. So the blue zone, those are essentially the regions of the world with the longest average lifespan. So yeah, longevity. So whatever, Sardinia, um, Greece, Japan, different places all over the world. And so from what I understand, a researcher went around and tried to figure out what all of these places have in common. And when he sort of boiled it down to food, no pun intended, he said, okay, we got it. This is what the people in all of these regions eat. So let's eat like them and we'll live till we're 247.
Okay. And what were the foods?
I will tell you in a moment. They are um, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans.
Okay. I'm going to take two blue zones and talk about them.
Okay.
The first one is going to be pretty short. I'm going to make short work of it. The first blue zone is Loma Linda, California. That's a blue zone.
Oh, I pass through there every once in a while.
Yeah.
Nice
And
place.
those people, they live to be a ripe old age and they're healthy. Look it up. Look it up.
Yeah,
I
I
see
only
Gina
know
over there.
I only
Look,
know I only know
Google it.
one
Yeah.
thing
What?
about Loma Linda, that they have like a huge like medical facility.
They do. It's also where President Nixon was from, I think. That's
I
where
thought that
the,
was Yorba Linda.
oh, that Yorba Linda. That's
Yeah.
right. Yorba Linda.
Yeah. So let's see. That it does seem strange out of all the places in the world that Loma Linda would have
I'm going
made
to
the
tell you why
list.
in a second, but go on.
Let's see. Loma Linda Blue Zone. Oh, I'm starting. Okay.
Are you
So
getting a little picture now? What did you learn, Gina? Gina just Googled something. I don't know what it is yet.
it's so funny. At first I was pissed at you because you didn't give me any direction, but I guess I didn't need it because the first thing that comes up is today a community of about 9,000 Adventists, as in 7-day Adventists in the Loma Linda area, are the core of America's Blue Zone. And we've talked about this before many times about the Seventh-day Adventist diet. Is that where we were going with this?
Well, we're going to start with that.
Okay.
They're vegan, right?
They're vegan.
And most of them are not just like the kind of vegans that eat Oreos.
Right.
They're healthy people. They exercise. They eat whole foods. The people in Loma Linda, you live in California. It's a wealthy area.
Yes.
Wealth also always brings with it longer lifespan.
Yeah.
Sorry. I mean, these people can afford better health than the regular person.
And again, Loma Linda has a huge medical center. So any problems, you zip right over there.
These are wealthy people with the best health care on the planet.
Yeah.
The other thing Adventists don't do, they don't use tobacco products.
Or alcohol.
No alcohol. So when you add up, you can't just look at the vegetables that they're eating, which is a lot better than eating a bunch of junk.
Oh, sure.
You have to look at, and I think, and I might be getting this wrong, a lot of, or at least when I talk to them on the phone, I talk to Adventists. There'll be, most of them are not vegan, they're vegetarian.
Okay.
And they'll eat eggs, and they will eat, some of them are pescatarians, they'll eat fish because they realize that it's so hard to just be again, eggs, fish, whole foods, veggies. They're living in a place that's like, folks, if you go to Loma Linda, it's like air conditioning year round.
Yeah. And as Vinnie sort of pointed out before, it's less about what they're eating and more about what they're not eating. So
Lifestyle.
you're not, exactly.
They're not eating fast foods. They're wealthy. Wealthy people don't eat junk. Right? They just don't.
No.
Bottom line. So they're not smoking. They're not drinking. They're not whoring. Staying up at night late and partying. All of that. That's all part. Gina uses the term, the body keeps a score.
Yeah. Famous book. Yeah.
So they're not doing any of that. So that's one zone. Could we agree on that, Gina?
I think so. Yeah.
Now, the largest group of centenarian men on the planet, they happen to be from my tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Sardinia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They claim that the Sardinians don't eat meat.
Oh.
Nothing further from the truth.
Please remind us. I totally forgot about this. I totally forgot about this part. Tell everyone where they came to that conclusion.
Oh, no, that was the Greeks, but that's the third blue zone. We can talk about.
Sorry.
The way they did that was when Ancel Keys, when he was doing his 21 country study, but he whittled it down to 7 countries.
Yeah, this is my favorite.
He was cherry picking.
Yeah.
People love this story. And he went to Crete.
Mm-hmm.
He goes to Crete, and they did a study there, and the Cretians eat a ton of meat. A ton. But they're all some form of Catholic. I don't know which Catholic they are. There's some, Greek Orthodox Catholic faith. And they do the 40 days during Lent. So most people know Catholics don't eat meat during Lent.
Right.
They might have Friday.
And when did Ancel show up?
He showed up on Ash Wednesday. He sent a crew down there. He goes, go down there for a couple of weeks and ask them what they're eating right now.
Yeah.
And that's how he got a 7th country. Do you see how these people lie? Do you get, I mean.
There's definitely some corners being cut.
Oh, listen, we can look at everything. Ancel Keys was a bully. The guy was a
Mm.
bully, right? So that's Crete. But what
And
they do in Sardinia is
yeah.
almost not. If you listen to the Friday show, I have a 2-week special coming up on the Fridays. They might be out already when this show comes out. They're with Dr. Bill Schindler. Bill Schindler is the star of like 10 episodes of The Great American Race. You can
Mm.
buy them on Amazon. It was done by National Geographic on one of those. He's an archaeologist. Dr. Schindler is pretty smart dude. And he spent time in Sardinia. He and his family just immersed in Sardinia. I want to say for 2 months, might have been 1 month. And he said, they when you get there, when you show up to any Sardinian's house, anywhere on the island, they'll bring out a charcuterie board, and on it there will be 2 or 3 different types of pig or lamb.
Mm.
There's some cheese, there's some olives, what have you.
Great.
He goes, and there's also lardo. Do you know what lardo is?
Is it like,
Google.
hold on.
It's a fat ball.
Yeah.
Google lardo. When I'm in Italy, I go for the lardo like there's no tomorrow. It's delicious. I had it before I
Ooh.
climbed Gran Paradiso. Give
It's
us the
literally, lardo's a type of salumi made by curing strips of fat back with rosemary and other herbs and spices. It looks like prosciutto, but it's stark white. It's stark. I mean, there is no meat. It's just fat.
It's just fat and it's delicious and it's a ball and you just eat it. And once you eat lardo, you can't not ever think about lardo again in your life. For me, lardo and cappuccino or lardo and espresso
Oh.
is like, if there's no heaven, this must be heaven. Right?
So
They,
how does this work then?
they eat lardo, they eat cured, they cure them themselves in their house. They dry hams and
Right.
meat, everything else themselves, right? So they're not getting all the store-bought shit.
Right.
Right? They're curing their own meats. If you ask them how many times a week they eat meat, what do you think they're going to tell you?
I mean, sounds like every day.
They're eating it every day. They're also eating eggs and bacon every day. They're eating dairy. They're eating a lot of cheese. Most of it they make themselves. They will tell you they eat meat once a week.
Huh?
On the big Sunday meal when they roast a pig or they do the Italians love to make a thing out of food, right? They love to make la da 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 da. I grew up with that. That's the Sunday meal.
Okay.
Together, they praise God. They do the whole thing. Old ladies with babushkas and they themselves. It's crazy.
Sure.
But they eat. That's what they call their big meat meal. All the other meals during the week, that's why I always tell people epidemiological studies. You ask people, do you eat meat every day? No, we don't eat meat. We eat charcuterie.
Yeah.
That's what they tell you. It's not
But
what they do.
But that's just semantics.
Right.
I mean, that doesn't seem, come on. Like in the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, when he says, I'm a vegetarian. Oh, that's okay. You're a vegetarian. I make lamb.
Yeah.
Like, no, that if you're a researcher, let's get into the semantics, please.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. So these men live longer. And by the way, it's hilly countryside and they walk everywhere. Right. I remember reading a thing 20 years ago on the Sardinians. And one researcher did a whole study on this rudimentary Sardinian table wine. They all make it themselves. They all have like one big barrel or whatever at their house and they'll make the wine and the whole thing. I can't remember what kind of grape it is, but it's a grape that only grows in that region. And most of the Sardinian wine, they call it Sardinian table wine. It's always fermented, sitting on the table. And there's not like the wine we get. There's like an inch of sediment,
right,
of eels and everything in the bottle. And they thought, oh, it's all the extra resveratrol and all this
Sure.
crazy stuff. This is why they're healthy. No, they're healthy because they have great, crisp, clean air that's whisking off of those hills right across the Mediterranean all day.
Mm.
They get a lot of sunshine. They walk everywhere, miles a day. So they're getting moderate zone 1, zone 2 exercise, whether they want to or not.
Right.
They're not sitting around death scrolling on a damn thing. And they're eating meat. Yet, I bet you didn't hear any of that in this blue
That's
zone.
exactly the opposite of what it sounds like the doc is about, because a very dear friend of mine who's trying to make changes in earnest just watched it and said, okay, so I have my black beans soaking, I'm making my own tortillas, because I watched Blue Zone, and I'm like, well, that's great. I mean, that's great, but I don't know that we're addressing the same issue. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's great to prepare food from scratch from home, and that's amazing, but I don't know that we're talking about the same thing. And I think the same thing could be said for Okinawa, which is, obviously in Japan, and maybe they're eating a lot of meat, maybe they're not. But guess what? The centenarians are doing? They're up, they're working, their blood is pumping. We don't put them in a bed and then say waste away until you die.
They move around. And the most racist thing I ever hear is when I see it on the internet all the time, and people don't realize they're being racist. They'll go, well, look at Okinawa. All those people do is eat rice. Really? You have Asian friends. I have Asian friends.
Many.
They sit around and eat rice.
No.
Most of my Asian friends, I use chopsticks better than them.
Well, and that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
But isn't that the most racist thing you've ever heard?
It's
Look at
pretty
Okinawa. All they do is eat
racist.
rice.
Yeah.
Really? You want to look at a culture? Go look at what they're doing to these poor kids that they over in Asia, that they get to do the sumo wrestling.
Mm.
They basically they sit around and eat bowls of rice all day to get fat. Right? They're trying to make these kids fat. It's child abuse. But are we okay with that? Because rice happens to make those poor people fat. And by the way, I've looked into this. Most of those people, just like our American football players, the guys from the Midwest, the big linemen, they die young.
Mm.
Okay? The ones eating rice over with the sumo, and the people in America that's eating like animals to play football, they die young. I'm sorry. It's just a fact. I don't make this shit.
No, you're right. And just to put a finer point on it, you haven't said this at least around me in years. So maybe you can remind us about the Roman soldiers and what they would eat and their subcutaneous fat. And I think this is a good time to remind people.
Yeah, well, people would always say to me, because I always say exercise at least 1 hour of aerobics per day. Gina's dad did more than that.
Oh yeah, every day. No music. He would just say out loud to himself old baseball stats.
Yeah. Let me tell you something. Your dad and me, we would have been good friends.
Oh, the best.
It's of that. But people always say to me, an hour a day. Jesus Christ, at the height of exercising, I did 3 aerobic classes a week. It's like, no. You need to move at least an hour a day. And I always tell people that's minimum.
Right.
That's minimum. And they will go, that's a lot. It's like, let me explain something to you. The Romans would move an army, sometimes 20, 25, 30 miles a day. These Romans were short. Men were shorter back then, 5'6", 5'8", and they weighed about 125 to 150 pounds. And they carried that much in equipment on foot every day. Then they would get to a battle and fight a battle and do a little raping and pillaging and then go back and start walking again. Every day. They did that every day. And what you think they had grains with them? You think they could carry grain? These guys were killing animals along the way. That's how they ate. They killed along the way.
Now, the difference between the svelte Roman soldiers who were walking not exactly in Air Jordans And I believe, if I'm getting this right from when you said it many years ago, the gladiators,
Right.
what would you say the difference in their eating habits were?
Well, the gladiators, they purposely ate a lot of grain, spelt, all the ancient grains and everything else, because they were trying to put fat on their bodies. You got to remember, the gladiators were like the Michael Jordans of their day.
Right.
These guys, a lot of them got to have sex with the queens and everything else, right?
Quite a prize. Yeah.
But they didn't look like the movie 300. These guys were trying to put on a layer of fat because if they were doing their gladiatoring and getting slashed up, they didn't want to, they wanted to cut through the fat. They can heal that up. They didn't want to
protect the organs.
They were protecting themselves, the muscle, the organs, everything else. So gladiators didn't have a six pack. They were fit and they were trying to stay as heavy as they can. And the way they would do that is by eating as much grain as they could, because everyone knows, even 2,000 years ago, that's 2,000 years ago, they knew 2,000 years ago that if you eat grains, you get fat. We knew this information 2,000 years ago.
It literally, it only saved their lives because they were in battle and needed more cushioning between, the end of a weapon and their heart.
Yeah, that's what they did.
That's so fascinating.
And the vegans like go, well, the gladiators, they had a lot of grains. Yeah, they were trying to get fat. They're trying to live another day.
Yeah. And it's, as you say, a lot of people say, well, look to the, I'm on paleo, or look to the industrial revolution, or look, when we started grains, we were never more fit, whatever. Go back to 2,000 years ago, and they'll tell you exactly why they ate it. It was literally to build fat between them and a pointy stick. I just think that is like the most interesting piece of trivia.
My grandmother had a sixth grade education. My great grandmother, I'm pretty sure, never went to school. Spoke mostly Italian, right? Her husband, Papa Tripodi, I don't know how much schooling. He had some schooling in Italy. Maybe they both had some schooling in Italy. They pretty much spoke Italian. They would literally say, don't eat all that pasta. Don't eat all that bread. You're going to get fat. I can't remember the word they used for it. There was an Italian word for it. But they would say, don't do that. You're going to get fat. Eat your meat. I mean, the Wall album, the great Wall
Pink
album.
Floyd?
Pink Floyd. How can you have any pudding if you don't eat your meat? In England, pudding is dessert. It's not just pudding. If you don't eat your meat, you can't have any pudding. How can you have any pudding if you don't eat your meat? Famous words in a song. Pink Floyd knew this in 1972. Well, no, wait. When did The Wall come out?
I feel like earlier.
Dark Side of the Moon came out before The Wall. Dark Side of the Moon was early 70s, maybe late 60s. And then The Wall came out after that.
79?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
You can't if you eat your meat, how can you have any pudding?
And in your family, it wasn't exactly Olive Garden when you're here, your family, the never ending pasta bowl. The pasta was a side dish on a small plate. It wasn't a vat that everyone was served in front of their chair.
Right. Well, it was all about the meat. Like my grandmother, we all lived together.
Right.
Yeah, it was like, and my grandmother, think the show, Everybody Loves Raymond.
Sure. They like lived next door
The next
and
house. They were all, my grandmother made meatballs the size of that.
Oh God.
The size of that. And there would be like a nest of pasta and a meatball. And you would eat your meatball, you would catch some of the pasta. And then when that meatball was done, she was slapping another one on there. You understand?
Yeah, it wasn't, and it's funny. Just to put a point on it, I was talking to somebody in line the other day, and I was a bunch of kids over, whatever, and there was madness. And I said, "Oh, I got to get McDonald's. I got to get a Happy Meal for this kid. I got to go do this for this kid. Like, it's crazy." And he goes, "At our house, if there's a bunch of kids over, we just make a giant pot of spaghetti."
Yeah.
And I was like, that's yeah. I mean, I was buying a Happy Meal. I understand, but just every time the family gets together, you just make a giant pot of spaghetti, and that's it.
I mean, even when we like some of the Cajuns from Vacherie would, every year get the football team, the parents from Vacherie. We had kids come from 30 miles away, and they were a different kind of Cajun, the Wagaspaks and Amadeus and the whole thing, and great people. And they would do a big thing for the football team at the end of the year because they wanted to appreciate the families, because after the game, all their kids,
You
our
take
mom,
them with you, and
but yeah, they would stay at all the houses in Donaldsonville
right.
and wanted to do this appreciation meal at the end of every year. And they would do like a big thing, and they would do it was always like rabbit, like a big rabbit it was a rabbit jambalaya. So there's a lot of
Ooh!
it was tons of pork in there, tons of rabbit, just one of the best. I used to look forward to that every year. Every year,
Wow.
just big rabbit cookout where because they knew we all loved it. And you don't just put rabbit in there because rabbit doesn't have a lot of fat. There were big chunks of pork in there in the jambalaya. And it was just unbelievable. And they would do, another one they would do, and is poured over rice, is rabbit sauce piquant. Just unbelievable food. I mean, none of it was just feeding kids pasta.
Right.
Right. When Gus Gutierrez's mom would cook, she would make big, beef. It was just like all this, like the hamburger meat all crumbled up, and you would just spoon it into a taco, but it was all tons of meat.
Yeah,
Right.
well, and like you said, and kids call it like walking tacos. Like in a hurry, or you're at a camp, Boy Scouts, or whatever. You open a little package of Fritos and you put the meat and the cheese in it.
Yeah. There was always meat available, and
Yeah.
it's not like that anymore. Gina, we're going to call it a day here. Folks, you know what to do. Gina Grad, she's over there with Brian.
Mm-hmm.
Brian and Gina show. I finally got it.
You did it. The Brian and Gina. Brian and Gina show. Just anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can find us. Just go ahead and click on it. It's a lot of fun. And as Vinnie always is so kind to remind people, book about being a step parent. It's for kids called My Extra Mom, available through Amazon. Just click on Vinnie's banner, grab the book, and thank you.
All right. So, Gina, you're going to be on the same mic on the same line as
Okay,
this.
I'll be quiet.
All right. So, on behalf of Gina Grad, my name is Vinnie Tortorich. Put life into living. Let's do it with a little bit of this guy. I hope this is the right song. Yeah, I think it is. You know what we're playing here, Gina?
I can guess.